no seventh tradition, no requirement for membership. Everyone is welcome. Our primary purpose is taking an in-depth look at the book, Alcoholics Anonymous, in order to deepen and strengthen our own recovery, to try to help others to do the same, and to try to become trusted servants of our fellowship. We are seeking conscious contact by trusting God, cleaning house, and helping others, and we're trying to improve that conscious contact by practicing steps 10, 11, and 12 every day, and applying the spiritual principles we are learning to the details of our ordinary day-to-day lives. We will begin this gathering with a moment of silence to reflect on why we are here. And now our opening readings adapted from the big book, and Candace has got number 1.
I'm Candace, I'm an alcoholic. It says, I earnestly advise every alcoholic to read this book through. And though perhaps you came to scoff, you will remain to pray. Page 0, right before page 1.
Thank you, Candace. And Jennifer, number 2.
Hi, good morning. I'm Jennifer. I'm an alcoholic. No attitude of holier than thou, no fees to pay, no access to grind, no people to please, no lectures to be endured. These are the conditions we have found most effective. Page 18. And be quick to see where religious people are right. Page 87.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. And Glenn, number 3.
My name's Glenn and I'm an alcoholic. If you are as seriously alcoholic as we were, we believe you have but 2 alternatives. One is to go on to the bitter end, blotting out of your consciousness how miserable you really are, page 25. And the other, to ask our Creator each morning in meditation to show us the way of patience, tolerance, kindness, and love, page 83.
Thank you, Glenn. Maureen, number 4.
Every day is a day when we must carry the vision of God's will for us into all our activities. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. These are thoughts which must go with us constantly. Page 85.
Okay, and Amy, number 5.
Just to the extent that I humbly rely on God and do as I think God would have me do, will I be able to experience spiritual serenity right in the midst of human calamity. Page 68. Head in the clouds and feet firmly planted on the ground. Page 130.
Okay, thank you, everybody. And I'm just going to mute you all. And here we go. Okay, so I just have to tell you what a wonderful day I had yesterday. I went to 3 different meetings, and they were all terrific. And then after the second meeting, we had this pie auction for a district event where our district is trying to hold a 87th, Bill and Bob's 87th AA birthday bash. And they were, so everybody brought these desserts, and I don't know how many people were there, but we raised $1,000 frickin' dollars, and it was just wild. And it felt really good. And then I went to an evening meeting because I wanted to see somebody, and I don't know, it blows my mind to be in this process for a while, and just how much I just love the whole deal. And it's just, the gifts of this thing are just, I don't know, beyond description. So, okay, today we're going to try to get through three chapters, and it may feel a little more scattered than it's felt before. And I can't read everything, it's easier when you're just focusing on what the book says and reading its words and responding to them. But I do want to mention that this came up in this meeting last night, because this is not easy stuff to do, and yet the heart of the whole thing is in the second line of the 3rd step prayer. Relieve me of the bondage of self, so I can better do what you want me to do. And it expresses the battle, at least for me, between the human will, you know, my sense of how I want my life to work out, and my Creator's will for me. And part of it is the confusion I feel between what I've created and the fact that I believe that my spiritual soul is something that has been created and I got nothing to do with it. I know I can affect my body and my mind, and I can create things, but I know on a spiritual level, that's just way beyond my power. And I've experienced a life of where I've had strong human ambitions, in the resentment inventory. Ambitions is always where I get tripped up, and I resent you when you seem to stand in the way of my ambitions for how I want my life to be. And really at the heart of it is my fear that I am powerless, and my response to fear is anger, and the anger shows up as a resentment. So then I go to work trying to change you by hating you. It just seems so stupid. But that's what I do. You know, I'm going to make you feel my ill will, and you're going to examine your behavior, and by golly, you're going to change because you don't want me hating you. And everybody will be better. I'll be happier. You'll be happier. The world will be a better place. It's just ridiculous, but that's how I live my life. And so to shift from my will for me to my Creator's will for me, it's just a huge deal. And we have to go through this tedious, painful process of being relieved of the bondage of self. And I just have not met anybody yet that says, oh yeah, feels great. I'm really enjoying being relieved of the bondage of self. It is, we wind up re-experiencing this stuff as it comes out of our consciousness. And so at any rate, this whole deal, this wandering through the big book, this is really an exercise in big book sponsorship, where you're trying to use the words of the book to help another come into relationship with God. And what an awesome task that is. I mean, what an amazing thing. And the book keeps saying, you know, you can get your body straightened out and you can get your mind straightened out, but if you don't get to this relationship with God, you won't stay. And you probably won't be able to help another because you're operating on human power. You're not operating on spiritual power. Amy and I were talking before the meeting about a wonderful 8-word prayer, although there are 3 words that come before. The 8-word prayer is empty me, heal me, guide me, use me. But it's kind of nice to add, dear God, please empty me, heal me, guide me, use me. And then probably thank you would be appropriate at the end. So in Big Book sponsorship, there are more pages devoted to step 12 than there are any other step. You know, step 12 is got the most pages. Step 1's got the next most pages. Step 2's got the next most pages. And then, you know, remember, we go through 3 through 11, we go through in chapter 5, how it works, and chapter 6, into action. The whole rest of the book is about 1, 2, and 12. So we're going to move relatively fast today through these, to wives, to to the family afterwards and to employers. And then next week, we're going to finish up with a vision for you. So, so we're looking at chapter, I don't know what, it's going to start on 104 in the book, and this is all in the study guide if you've got that in front of you. So the first thing is wonderful bill. It is, you know, when we get to two employers, that actually was written by Hank Parkhurst, and this chapter makes the claim that it's a wife of an alcoholic writing it, and that was supposed to be Lois, but the fact seems to be that it was Bill that wrote it, so that on page 104 when it says we want the wives of alcoholics to address the wives of men who drink too much. What they say will apply to nearly everyone bound by ties of blood or affection to an alcoholic, and this chapter became the basis of Al-Anon, and there is a footnote on Al-Anon starting up. And I just have a confession to make. I went to Al-Anon before I went to AA. I just avoided it. I went to Codependence Anonymous, Adult Children of Alcoholics. Their program, and they do a lot of Al-Anon. So I'm just telling you, I haven't done it. Maybe you have. So I'm looking at page 105, and paragraph starts with our loyalty and the desire that our husbands hold up their heads and be like other men have begotten all sorts of predicaments. We have been unselfish and self-sacrificing. We have told innumerable lies to protect our pride and husband's reputation. We've prayed, we've begged, we've been patient, and we've struck out viciously. When he's rolling, boy, he's good. The images he creates, we have run away. We've been hysterical. We've been terror-stricken. We've sought sympathy. We have had retaliatory love affairs. Our homes have been battlegrounds. I mean, this is tough stuff to read, and it's tough to remember our side of that transaction, you know, and that's hard, but I think it's really important at some point that we do address the, well, of course it is. I mean, it's amends come out of this, that we do address the impossible situation that we've created. We seldom had friends at our homes. You know, we never know. We can't bring people in. There's never been financial security. It's at the bottom of 105. These are tough things. When you get over to 107, under these conditions, we naturally made mistakes. Some of them arose out of ignorance of alcoholism. This is going to show up in all of these chapters at the ignorance of alcoholism. And I think it's the most clear if we get to two employers, because in some ways, two employers, it's really good information if you're trying to sponsor somebody. But the problem with it is if the employer is not alcoholic, there's going to be a fundamental misunderstanding. The employer is not going to understand the phenomenon of craving or the strange mental blank spot. And if you remember Bill's reaction to Bob, that was the first time that Bob felt somebody talking to him that really knew about the disease and not just trying to employ the body and the mind to raise up the personal will so that you just stop, which a hard drinker can do, but a real alcoholic can't. And so this ignorance of alcoholism becomes a major a major obstacle if a non-alcoholic is trying to help an alcoholic. And just making that point. So I'm on page 108. Paragraph starts with, there are some questions which race through the mind of every woman who's had an alcoholic husband. We hope this book has answered some. Perhaps your husband's been living in that strange world of alcoholism where everything is distorted and exaggerated. I mean, that's not, they're talking about us. You can see that he really does love you with his better self. Of course, there's such a thing as incompatibility, but in nearly every instance, the alcoholic only seems to be unloving and inconsiderate. And it's usually because he is warped and sickened that he says and does these appalling things. Today, most of our men are better husbands and fathers than ever before. Absolutely. We're just plain better human beings, and it's going to show up in everything that we do. Let's see. Okay, I'm over on page 111 where they're going to go through some principles of success, and these are interesting. First principle of success is that you should never be angry. Can you imagine? It's like telling you, well, the first principle of success is you can't cop any resentments. How many of us could do that? But it is very important to remember. I think when you're working with another alcoholic, regardless of where they are in the steps, it's good to really remember pages 67, 68, and 69. And each page, 69 is about sex, 68 is about fear, 67 is about resentment. And each page has something to avoid and something to seek, and a prayer for doing that. And remembering that the first one on 67 is we avoid retaliation or argument. It speaks directly to this. Don't try to get into anger and retaliation. We avoid retaliation or argument. Why? Because they are never helpful. They do not work. And then page 67 makes a wonderful promise. We cannot be helpful to everybody. That's just the truth. And it's really the hardest when there's somebody very close to you. It could be a child, a parent, a sibling. The truth is we can't be helpful to everybody. So what are we supposed to do if we can't be helpful? Well, then it gives you what we're to seek. And that's a kindly and tolerant view, which we will get if we ask higher power for a kindly and tolerant view. This is Buddhist compassion. This is being able to look at another person as sick, like yourself. Yeah. It'll come back, I think. Oh, yeah? Okay. I don't know if I spoke too loud or what. Okay. So page 68, the avoidance is apologizing for God, which for me means whining and complaining about anything. Politics, traffic, anything, another person. And instead, it says we are to let God demonstrate through us what God can do, which is exactly what the third step prayer says at the end. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them will let you demonstrate through me your power, your love, your way of life. And then 69 says something very interesting. It's about sex conduct, but what it says is, we don't judge another, period. We are not to be the arbiters of anybody else's sex conduct. We don't judge. To judge another is to take on a power we simply do not have. And instead, what we are to do is to ask God to mold our ideals and help us live up to them, which is exactly what Step 11 is saying, God, please mold my ideals and help and give me the power, because lack of power is my dilemma. Give me the power to live up to them. So, at any rate, this is just on 111. This is just a repeat of that. Our next thought is, you should never tell him what he must do about his drinking. Well, you know, when the psychiatrists studied us in the 40s, I think it was, they came up with two predominant characteristics: grandiose and defiant. And grandiose may or may not be the best of words, but it if you say self-centered, you know, where we make everything about us, where everything about us is what's most important, and we're incapable of altruism. Altruism is designed as being interested in the welfare of others, as opposed to being interested in the welfare of me. That's all I've ever been interested in. So if you're gonna, I mean, if you're gonna tell him what he must do about his drinking, you're gonna run up against defiance, and it's simply not gonna work. The next paragraph, be determined, you know, that's just as true with in a relationship as it is with an individual in Alcoholics Anonymous. Keep coming back is probably the most important advice we can give anybody in a meeting. Don't quit. Don't go away. Persevere. Be determined that people who are living contented, sober lives are not lying to you when they tell you that if you want this, you're going to have to develop a relationship with God. Okay, turning some pages here, and I'm over to page 115, and the paragraph starts with, we find that most of this embarrassment is unnecessary. You can quietly let your friends know the nature of his illness. Well, this is the same thing as we've talked about before. What's so hard is non-alcoholics have a really hard time understanding what we go through. They just, you know, you can't, you talk about the phenomenon of craving, and an average temperate drinker whose response to alcohol is to stop. They don't understand that right from the get-go. And they may or may not be agnostic. You know, if they're agnostic, they're not going to understand the necessity of a relationship with God. Further down 115, the same principle applies in dealing with children. Usually they actually need protection from their father. Unless they actually need protection from their father, it's best not to take sides in any argument he has with them while drinking. Use your energies to promote a better understanding all around. You know, well, one of the things that my sponsor pointed out was that we can use our traditions and you know, that first tradition says personal recovery. Oops, let's stay in my, yeah. Oh, you can hear me. Okay. Sorry, I don't know what's up today with that. Just talking about the first tradition, that personal recovery depends upon AA unity. That if we don't have unity in a work situation or a family situation, there's no way we're going to be able to put principles before personalities. You know, being able to do that, that is a great gift, to put principles of spiritual progress before the needs and wants and fears of individual personalities. So at any rate, let's see. Frequently, you have felt obliged to tell your husband's employer and his friends that he is sick when, as a matter of fact, he was tight. Avoid answering these inquiries as much as you can whenever possible. Let your husband explain. This is just trying to get everybody more honest in the situation that they're in. All right, moving along. On page 118, there's a paragraph that starts with, "We women carry with us a picture of the ideal man, the sort of chap we would like our husbands to be." And what winds up happening, the next paragraph, another feeling we are very likely to entertain is one of resentment, that love and loyalty could not cure our husbands of alcoholism. I just think it's really important to remember that other people trying to deal with us are going to go through the same stuff that we go through with other people, and that a lot of it is expectations, how we're expecting another person to behave in terms of their relationship with us. And it mentions over on 119, still another difficulty, you may become jealous of the attention that he bestows on Alcoholics Anonymous. This is more prevalent than we might realize. So let's see. I just want one last thing on to wives. It's on page 120. It's in the paragraph, the bottom paragraph. "We never try to arrange a man's life so as to shield him from temptation." And further down it says, "If he gets drunk, do not blame yourself." And then it makes a very black and white statement. God has either removed your husband's liquor problem or God has not. That's real black and white. It's either happened or it hasn't. So wanted to point that out. Okay, moving on to families. And first one is on the first page. So I'm on chapter 9, the family afterward, on page 122. I'll apologize for Bill saying our women folk. It's not a very well-received statement. Have suggested certain attitudes a wife may take with a husband who is recovering. Perhaps they created the impression that he is to be wrapped in cotton wool and placed on a pedestal. Successful readjustment means exactly the opposite. It's important to understand that. All members of the family should meet upon the common ground. This is what we're after, the common ground of tolerance, understanding, and love. But this involves a process of deflation. The alcoholic, his wife, his children, his in-laws, each one is likely to have fixed ideas about the family's attitude toward himself or herself. Each is interested in having his or her wishes respected. This is the ultimate problem. We talked about it before. Letting go of old ideas. What's how it works says nothing really happens until we let go of our fixed ideas. And that's a challenging, time-consuming process, but it's saying it right here. I have a note here to say something about, we have that third step prayer, relieve me of the bondage of self that I may better do thy will. And in step 3 in the study guide, there's a little page on levels of the third step decision. So I just want to remind us all that this decision to humbly rely on God and do as we think God wants us to do, this goes through some changes as you go your will for me. And then I think it shifts again after 4 and 5 when we're into 6. Oops, this is saying, can you hear me? Yeah. It changes again in 4 and 5 when we make the decision to really change by entering into the prayer for removal of our character defects and to make amends. And then when you get to amends, it says, and I'm pretty sure it's the top of page 77, it says, we're trying to get our lives in order, but our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and the people about it. That's really quite something. And I think that's what better do thy will means, but we're going through this process to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and the people about us. And then finally, you change. I think you change again when you get into 11 and 12, in that you're deciding to really try to improve this conscious contact thing, and to carry a message and practice principles is a way of doing that. So I'm just saying that the power of that prayer, of the 3rd step prayer, runs all through our steps. Okay, on page 124 is this Henry Ford quote, and you know, there's a lot of resistance to really looking at our past when we look at resentment, and we look at fear, and we look at our remorse over our selfish conduct in step 4, and disclose that to another in step 5. But it's wonderful, the 9th step promises, and this thing here, Henry Ford once made that experience is the thing of supreme value, and changing our point of view on our own experience. I know the one that I really loved, because it took me so long to get here. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, you know, no matter how miserable our experiences have been, when we see how these experiences could help us help another, we get redemption. It's a promise that what I look back on with extreme negativity and resistance to even looking at can be of supreme value in me learning how to, and I can certainly say this personally in terms of having been through a deep and protracted depression, that I am still trying to understand what was happening. I do believe I was being relieved of my old ideas and my bondage of self to a certain degree. Okay. It's harder for me when I'm trying to cover a lot of ground. I'm over on page 127 of the Family Afterward. And this is a principle, and it says, for us, material well-being always followed spiritual progress. It never preceded. It's just reminding us that the heart of the whole thing is this relationship with higher power. That if we're all, you know, saying, well, as soon as I get a job, or as soon as I get my relationship back, maybe then I'll try to learn how to pray. It doesn't work that way. You know, Silkworth said it. I urge every alcoholic to read this book through thoroughly, and instead of contempt prior to investigation, that you learn how to pray. I'm on page 128, the bottom of page 128 and the top of 129. And this again, I think this is Bill at his finest. It's not only very descriptive, but it has a major point. The paragraph starts with, he's not so unbalanced as they might think. All right, good morning, everybody. You know, I wondered what the word penultimate meant, and it means second to last. So this, I think, is the penultimate meeting of this deal. We're gonna, I'm hoping to get through wives, family, and employers, and then next week we'll do a vision for you, and we'll be done till the fall when we're going to go back through the first 32 because we didn't get them on the thing. So at any rate, so good morning and thank you, and we're going to start with our opening words. Welcome to the 62nd session of Wandering Through the Big Book. We're not a meeting of the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, no group conscience. We have indulged in spiritual intoxication like a gaunt prospector, belt drawn over the last ounce of food. Our pick struck gold. Joy at release from a lifetime of frustration knew no bounds. Father feels he has struck something better than gold. For a time, he may try to hug the new treasure to himself. He may not see at once that he has barely scratched a limitless load, which will pay dividends only if he minds it for the rest of his life and insists on giving away the entire product. First of all, I don't know for you, the image of a prospector is pretty vague for me, but the idea is that he's at the end. He's starving and he's still picking away at this thing. And then all of a sudden he strikes this limitless load, which is conscious contact. And when we do that, we get a type of enthusiasm that's amazing, and get strong feelings of wow, meaning and purpose for the first time or whatever. And this is saying at first we may try to just hang on to it. That's what Silkworth said to Bill. I don't know what's happening, but I hope you can hang on to it. But then what Wilson is saying is you're only going to be able to keep this thing if you keep doing this the rest of your life and you insist on giving away the entire product. It's really quite an image. And I remember hearing a AA speaker say one time, we say you've got to give it away to keep it. And his truth was, you got to give it away to really get it, that it's in trying to help another that you understand more what actually happened to you. So, okay. And then, of course, the next page, page 130, we have this thing that we read at the beginning. Those of us who have spent much time in the world of spiritual make-believe have eventually seen the childishness of it. This is just a wonderful model. We say faith without works is dead, and this is another way of saying that. It's wonderful to have conscious contact, to experience the bliss of just being, but if we don't put that into action, we're living in the world of spiritual make-believe, that where it's when we can meet the calamity with serenity that this thing is really working for us. So let's see. This dream world has been replaced by a great sense of purpose, accompanied by a growing consciousness of the power of God in our lives. That's what I want. We have come to believe God would like us to keep our heads in the clouds with him. That's humbly relying on God, but that our feet ought to be firmly planted on earth. That's where our fellow travelers are. That's where our work is to be done. That's feet on the ground. Okay, let's see. on page 132 is something you hear a lot, and we are not a glum lot. And they're really two. So my experience is when I am living in and out of the grace of God, I can't help but be joyful. I know it's obnoxious sometimes when I meet with people one-on-one, or I hear somebody in a meeting, I start laughing, and I hope they're not offended, but it's like, when you hear somebody going over all the trouble that's showing up, and I don't know what it comes from, but it's just, I don't know what I'm trying to say. I know that living in the grace of God, as a result of the grace of God, and for the grace of God, I feel like the truest joy that I have felt in this life is the inevitable consequence of that. And so this is saying we're not a glum lot. I mean, if you do have this relationship, you're gonna be joyful and enthusiastic. But then they give you another point. If other people don't see that, why are they going to go through all this drudgery of our steps, of doing the hard work of our steps and being of service and all that stuff? So just wanted to point that out. And then at the very end of the chapter, that's where it says some of our sayings. First things first, live and let live, easy does it. So just this process is trying to find these principles, prayers, and promises. Somebody said that, the whole book, every page, principles, prayers, and promises, spiritual principles that if I will pray the prayers, I will experience the promises.
Hey, how's it going?
Whoops. Oh, George, I'm mute you here. Hold on.
I know it was tough. Got within one.
Sorry. Okay. Let's see. Two employers, chapter 10. Got 5 minutes here. And I guess the first thing I felt in reading over this thing was how you're asking a non-alcoholic employer to deal with an alcoholic, and I'm not sure it can be done, but I do feel like there are some principles in here that you can use in sponsorship, and they're worth reviewing. So the first one I would like to point out is on page 141. And they're going to run through a bunch of kind of steps for the employer, but what I'm saying as we read through these are equally applicable to sponsors. So at the bottom of 141, paragraph starts with state that you know about his drinking and that it must stop. You might say you appreciate his abilities, would like to keep him, but cannot if he continues to drink. A firm attitude at this point has helped many of us. Next, he can be assured that you do not intend to lecture, moralize, or condemn. This is establishing the conditions, and no lectures to be endured. If possible, I like this. If possible, express a lack of hard feeling toward him. What they're saying is resentment's not going to work. We avoid retaliation or argument. At this point, it might be well to explain alcoholism. Now, how the hell is he going to explain alcoholism if he's not a real alcoholic? Say that you believe he's gravely ill. Does he want to get well? You ask because many alcoholics, being warped and drugged, do not want to quit. This is the fundamental. Nothing happens. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. Nothing really happens in here until somebody wants to stop drinking, wants a better life than the life that they've got. But sometimes, we don't even, I certainly, my personal experience, I had no idea that I was alcoholic. It's just laughable to me today that I could drink for as long as I drank, thinking I knew what I was doing. So let's see. Do not want to quit, but will he take every necessary step, submit to anything to get well, go to any lengths? If he says yes, does he really mean it? Or deep down inside, does he think he is fooling you? That after rest and treatment, he will be able to get away with a few drinks now and then. We believe a man should be thoroughly probed on these points. Be satisfied he is not deceiving himself or you. That's a tall order. And I don't think a non-alcoholic employer can do it. Whether you mention this book is a matter for your discretion. If he temporizes and still thinks he can ever drink again, even beer, he might as well be discharged after the next bender, which, if an alcoholic, he is almost certain to have. You should understand that emphatically. Either you are dealing with a man who can and will get well, or you are not. Very black and white again. Very black and white, like either God's removed your husband's obsession with alcohol or he has not. This may seem severe, but it is usually the best course. Then they talk about introducing the book and suggesting this definite course of action. At the bottom of the first paragraph on 143, it is better for him to feel fully responsible. They're talking about him paying for the treatment. And it just brings up the tradition of fully self-supporting, that we've got skin in the game, that we're involved at a deeper level. In the next paragraph, if your man accepts your offer, physical treatment is just a small part. Getting sober is a small part of this thing. He must undergo a change of heart. That's what we're really after. And that change of heart, for me anyway, occurs the closer I get to my spiritual creator. We have to place recovery above everything. And then it talks about, the next paragraph talks about maintaining confidentiality. And then at the bottom of 143, to return to the subject matter of this book, talks about using the book. And over on page 144, it suggests again, if you persevere. So there's a lot of good stuff here. I need to stop now, but let me just see if anything else to. Oh, over on 146, after your man has gone along without drinking for a few minutes, giving you the alcoholic runaround. I really like that. But then he says, being on a radically different basis of life, he will never take advantage of the situation. Your man may be trusted. This is the big deal, you know. Trust is always, I think, the key ingredient. I have to learn to trust AA. I have to learn to trust the people in AA that have done this stuff. Trust the process, trust the book, and that will eventually lead me to trusting my higher power, my higher self. So I'm going to stop and we'll gong the gong and then be open for some open discussion here. And I hope to see you next week for our last session till the fall, when we'll go back. I appreciate your time and attention, and thank you very much. Sorry.